Yo, goons, what's good? Welcome back. Today, we're going to make another guide for Guilty Gear Strive yet again, but this time is going to be more generalized, so I usually focus on Gold Lewis content. Check the rest of the channel if you're interested in that. But today, we're going to be talking about something that I don't see nearly enough in the guide section of Strive on, which is going to be instant blocking. So I figured I would talk a little bit about how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, and then I would give a good chunk of this video showing examples where it really makes the difference. So that being said, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to say is if you're a relatively new player, or even if you're someone who's not that new but still struggling to get Celestial, even if you're in Celestial and you're not winning a significant majority of your games, I would say that it is not worth your effort trying to learn to instant block consistently. Now, why? It's because instant blocking requires a lot of game knowledge, knowing where to do it and when to do it, and also knowing what to do when you instant block. All of those are not easy. Theoretically speaking, it's kind of a mechanical skill that you can practice the way that it works, which we'll get into in a minute here. But practically, I would say that you're going to end up not benefiting enough from instant blocking compared to the potential issues that it causes to learn it if you're not a sufficiently high level player. So I don't mean to gatekeep, but I genuinely believe your time is actually better spent making your combos more consistent, making sure you're watching top players of your character and understanding what your pressure should look like, and devoting time to matchup knowledge. And ideally, once you have a solid foundation in everything, then you try to incorporate instant blocking a little bit more, especially when it comes to defense. You shouldn't be someone who's, getting opened up by floor 10 Maze mashing their dolphins over and over, and you're trying to learn how to instant block. I personally just don't think that computes, in my opinion. So how exactly does instant blocking work? Well, the way that you get an instant block is if you block an opponent's attack within 2 frames of it coming out. And so practically, that means you're going to be down backing a lot of the time and then resetting to neutral, and then going down back or back within 2 frames of an attack coming out. And naturally that means some are much more easy to instant block consistently than others. But the benefits are that instant blocking prevents chip damage, which is huge, absolutely massive in certain matchups. Not only that, but it also reduces the pushback to 0 from any move. Doesn't matter what the move is, you will not get pushback at all if you instant block, if you're defending. Also, you gain twice as much meter for instant blocking a move versus if you don't instant block it, because you do gain meter on defense. And there's this stat called tension balance that a lot of people don't understand, which is basically like the state of how the game thinks you're being aggressive. In other words, if you're backdashing a lot, you're going to get danger and your meter is going to go down, and eventually you're going to get negative penalty, right? And basically the game is constantly judging whether or not you're close to danger or negative penalty. And a lot of times on defense, you might be, because backdash stacks that up a bit, playing defensively stacks that up a bit. But instant blocking actually pushes that balance away from danger. It will make it take longer to get there, which is good, right? Not only that, but instant blocking in the air makes a massive difference. So normally, if you block something in the air, the opponent is at a huge advantage, because if you didn't know, there are 19 frames of recovery on landing in this game. 19. That is enormous, and it actually is so much that landing is straight up punishable in this game. Every character can punish your landing, no matter what, even if you're blocking the entire time, right? But if you instant block a move in the air, your landing recovery is only 5 frames, and you'll also fall faster. So it makes a big difference if you're blocking things in the air. So the main reason you instant block is not only for those benefits, but also, most importantly, you can punish moves that wouldn't normally be punishable using instant block, depending on your character. And I'm using Gold Lewis here because I main Gold Lewis, but also because his fastest button is 5 frames and his next fastest is 8 frames. So he's kind of the worst case scenario in a lot of ways. If your character can oppress this guy, well, normally he wouldn't be able to do anything with his 5 frame buttons if he can instant block. Now he can do something a lot of the time, and your character can too, because you probably have a 5 framer that's even better. I also wanted to say that there's IBFD, which is instant block faultless defense, which is if you IB while you're FDing at the same time. And this also makes it so that you gain the benefits of FD. So you don't get any chip, you don't get any risk, but most importantly, the pushback compared to normal FD is increased dramatically, which is very important against particular characters who want to stay in your face and who can keep oppressing you if they just manage to stay in your face. So that basically means that it's not always a good thing to IB. And it sometimes isn't even always a good thing to IBFD either. So I really want you to keep that in mind. You shouldn't be aiming to do it everywhere, which is another reason why game knowledge is really important when you're learning how to instant block. That being said, let me actually try to give some tips on how to learn to instant block relatively consistently. So there are some strings in the game that are timed very similarly across players, and some of them are just straight up auto-timed. In my opinion, for learning to instant block, starting on those is the most important. That will start to help you get a feel for what the window is for pressing down back compared to when they're putting out their move, right? And so that would be your Nagos and your Rams and your Chips. Rekka style moves where you minimize the delay as much as possible, even though some of them can have variable timing. But Nago is probably the best place to start with trying to learn how to instant block. And what you should do, in my opinion, is just head to the lab, record Nago to far slash, do his Rekka, and try to instant block the second hit. And if you want to try to get more consistent, you can try instant blocking the third hit as well. So I would also recommend that when you're going for your IB attempts, you're doing it by holding down back, because the vast majority of moves in this game are going to be either mids or lows. There are a few overheads in the game, and that also is going to be relevant when we talk about when you should IB and IBFD, because you should definitely not always be going for it. So I also wanted to say that you should also try to make sure that your controller in your display is always going back to neutral in between instant block attempts. Every single time. Otherwise, you're not even going to be able to get another instant block attempt. You're locked out from even trying it in the game until you've gone back to neutral when you're defending. So keep that in mind, right? And that's going to be a big roadblock for a lot of people. Just make absolutely sure that you're completely letting go of whatever your controller is. Which brings me to my next topic. This technique is definitely easier on some controllers than others. In my opinion, it is much easier on digital inputs, so hitbox, mixbox, even pad, than it is on stick. And the reason for that is because stick basically has some time for you to let go of your stick and let it reset to neutral, because the arcade stick itself has to move back to neutral. Whereas if you're on digital inputs, you just let go instantly with your fingers. And it's also a little bit easier to let go with like 2 fingers to release buttons than it is to let go of a lever with multiple fingers or your whole hand, or however people grip it. I used to play on arcade stick, so in my opinion, I really genuinely believe that it's better on digital input. So keep that in mind. But there are many top players that play on stick who are great at instant blocking and IBFD. Watch Kid Viper, for example, on Twitch if you want to see a little bit more of that. So another character where it's going to be pretty important to be IBing against, and who happen to has a Rekka, is going to be Ramlethal. So after you've messed around with Nago a little bit, and you've tried to implement it in your matches, I would say that Ram is also a good place to start. And that's exactly why. You can actually punish the second hit of Ram's Rekka if you instant block it. Not only that, but you can punish the first hit of her Rekka if you instant block it as well, because the first hit of Ram's Rekka is -5. Now you're almost always out of range to do anything about that, but if you instant block, you're going to be in range to do something about that pretty often. However, you have 5 frames to react. So right now I have Ram set to 0 delay Rekka, right, which means she's doing it as fast as she possibly can, and watch what happens if I instant block the first hit as well. Look at that. I also got a punish. Now, this one's actually going to be punishable regardless of if you instant block, but a lot of the time, they're not going to be doing this at a close enough distance for you to get it, which is where the instant block actually comes in. So, this is another really good example to try. This one's super practical, by the way, because the difference between Rams going for their pressure on you and you getting a back throw is massive. A lot of the time, if you're in the corner and they're going to generate meter, they're going to go all the way through with their Rekka. They're going to do all 3 hits, or they're going to at least do the first 2 hits, because it generates the meter intention. Why wouldn't they? That's where you back throw incident then. Uh-oh, back throw incident. Oh, drone mix-up. You get the idea. So it's really, really, really strong. The difference between getting pressured by Ram's Rekka and her generating tons of meter, and you getting a back throw and putting them into the corner, is massive. Absolutely insane difference. Just getting that once per game can be an absolute insane change in the matchup for you. So it's really, really important in this case too. So you can see there I also punished the second hit of Chip's Rekka with my 5-frame button. That one's also going to be only possible if you instant block a lot of the time. And Chip's Rekka can have variable timing, but keep in mind that you can go for instant block a little bit early. And in fact, if you're doing instant block correctly, you're always going for it before the hit comes out, which is why it's really important to pay attention to the opponent's rhythm. A lot of chips, even though this Rekka has variable timing, they will do kind of a similar level of delay. And within that range, as long as you're trying your IB, you're going to be getting it pretty often. I mean, right now, what I have them set to do is a recorded delayed Rekka, right? This is not the auto time version that's going on here, and I didn't practice this for very long to actually get it, right? So this is going to be another example that you should probably be labbing. So the next place I would say you should start to practice IB and IBFD, especially on this one, is going to be on the opponent's meaty timings. The reason I say that is because even though opponents can meaty with all kinds of different things, ideally they're going to be hitting you on the first frame of your wake up, or at least within the first two. And that means that the timing for you is basically always going to be the same. You're going to be timing your IB or your IBFD with when you wake up. It does not matter what the opponent's doing. As long as they're meeting you, they're hitting you basically on the same frame relative to your wake up. And so this one's also going to allow you to do things pretty consistently, and the benefit from instant blocking or IBFDing the opponent's meaty option is huge, absolutely huge in a lot of cases. So where I'd recommend you start with that is by going to IBFD some common safe jump setups. So I've got Giovanna here to help me demonstrate that. So you can see the pushback there is pretty decent. I mean, look how far she went back, and let's just compare that to what happens if I don't IBFD. She's right in my face. She's even in close slash range. And that's going to be the difference maker. A lot of the time, opponents will be in close slash range if they do a safe jump on you. However, if you IBFD, they're not going to be in close slash range anymore. And that's also going to remove the threat of tick throws a lot, or make it a lot worse at least. So another really good spot to practice. Safe jumps. Pretty much every character has some kind of safe jump, and another really common spot you see this is after wall break with the super. Opponent's going to safe jump in on you, you're going to IBFD, and you're going to be happy, because if you IBFD a safe jump mid-screen, a lot of the time you can backdash, disengage. If they hard call it out, you can still get punished on the backdash, but it's going to force them to change up their pressure nonetheless. So you've also got this pretty common setup on Giovanna, where in the corner they'll close slash you with OTG, and then they will do a with 5H, and that basically allows them to auto time a strike throw scenario with close slash or with throw. And this is going to be another example where IBFDing a close slash meaty is going to make this just a lot less threatening. Look how far back she gets pushed by that. That's often going to push her 214K into 6P-able ranges. So this is also a really, really good spot. Now, all kinds of characters go for close slash meaties. I mean, it happens all the time. All the time. So, I mean, any meaty option, really, you're going to be put in a much better spot if you're going to IBFD it. And you can pretty much go for it every single time, because you can react if the opponent's going to do a safe jump, which is really the only overheads you have to worry about on wake up, at least for most characters. Some characters can meet you with an overhead. I wonder what characters those could be. Regardless, let's continue on. So right now we have Soul meeting us with close slash, and you can see with normal FD there's a decent amount of pushback, but he's certainly still in far slash and 5H range to frame trap me. Look at the extra pushback. He's not even in 5H range. If he goes for a far slash, I can probably 6P. He's not in 2K range. He's not in 2S range. His pressure is just weakened dramatically by IBFDing his wake up. And that's going to be true for pretty much every single character. And a lot of the time, if you're mid-screen, like I said, after an IBFD, backdash is a good option. If you think they're going to keep mashing, you can often 6P follow-ups if you IBFD a meaty. Or sometimes you can just straight up start mashing and you know, punish their whiff, because they're going to throw out a button that will whiff here when they normally wouldn't. So for example, if he tried to 5H after that close slash, it would have whiffed, and if I were just mashing far slash or something like that, he would get punished. So another reason it's very important. So the next place, the next tier up where you should start practicing your IBs and IBFDs is going to be on strings with characters that are commonly timed the same across players. Now these aren't Rekkas and they're not auto-timed either, but regardless, they're going to be Gatlings that pretty much all the players time the same and where there's going to be some kind of benefit to IB and IBFD. Jacko's a great example of that. You can see that I just punished Jacko for doing that shit. And this stuff is really annoying because that move that I have Jacko using after 236k, this one, for circle back P, basically eliminates or strongly negates the negative frames of her 214k, the move after 2k 2D. And that means that pressuring Jacko can be really, really annoying because she kind of just gets in and does that and her turn isn't really over. She goes back to neutral, which for some characters is really hard to deal with. But if you instant block her 236k, you get a grab punish. And again, the difference from getting no punish or going back to neutral and getting a grab punish is game defining, right? Getting that once a game can make a huge difference in how your matchup looks like against these sorts of characters, right? So Jacko's a great example. 2k 2D 236k is a really, really common string. And this one you can actually IB pretty consistently, right? Because you can't really delay 2k 2D on that character because it's a Gatling string, and they also don't really delay the 214k much. Not only that, but you can look at Jacko and really recognize the startup of her 236k and use that to make your input a little bit more precise when it comes to instant blocking her. Right? This one should be really consistent. You can kind of think of it as a Rekka in a lot of ways. So there are a lot of other characters that have similarly timed strings across the players, and we're going to get into that in just a minute here when we get into the overall examples section. But I would say that those are really all the tiers that you want to concentrate on for instant blocking. So auto-timed Rekkas would be the first one, meaties would be the second one, and then strings that are often timed the same would be the third one. I do not recommend going beyond these three tiers of concentration, if you will, on instant blocking, because if you're trying to instant block everything, your timing is going to get thrown off, right? Keep in mind, to instant block, you really need to know the timing of what you're instant blocking, and opponents can just stagger so much in this game, and they can do buttons that are really, really quick to instant block in between, that it's not going to be worth going for a lot of the time. Most of the time when you're trying to instant block, it's going to be in scenarios where you recognize you should go for it and where there's a significant reward for doing so, because it's not always a good idea to go for instant block. So my character happens to be a really good example of why going for instant block isn't always that good. So right now I have Jacko set to instant block everything, and watch what happens if she tries to instant block and throw some of my pretty common pressure that I like to go for. Oh, suddenly she just died for trying to instant block. Uh-oh. So what I'm trying to get at here is that you should really weigh the risk-reward of instant blocking. In scenarios where you're against characters that will just blow you up for instant blocking, don't go for it. Because even I, who have practiced this a lot and gotten pretty consistent at it, and even the best players in the world at instant blocking, have lost games, significant games, to just trying to instant block and getting hit as a result. So that's why I would say you really want to concentrate on those tiers. When you're against characters with a lot of high-low mix-ups especially, I really recommend not going for instant block, because it's really hard to do just back versus down back while thinking about instant block at the same time. Instant block is a conscious decision, right? It's super hard to get to the point where you're going to be doing it unconsciously, because you always need to recognize the situations where you can go for an instant block first. Because like I said, Gatlings are really fast a lot of the time. There's variable timing. You're not going to react and do something that takes 2 frames. It's just, it's not practical. So you only want to do it in scenarios where you recognize an opportunity. Otherwise, you're going to get hit when you're going for it. So keep that in mind. So a couple characters where I would say it's not good to go for. Definitely Gold Lewis, because he likes to be in your face. Instant blocking will often keep him closer. And in addition to that, Zato. Oh man, that character has a lot of high-low mix-ups. Chip can also be one where it helps against his Rekka, but against everything else, it's a serious bait because there's like no time in between his Gatlings, right? Even if you have your timing really, really good on what I already mentioned, IBing his Gatlings it's going to be insanely hard. His Rekka, really nice to IB. Everything else, don't even bother, except maybe meaties, because if that man is just mashing his K and P buttons, or whatever, he's whiff mashing on you, doing chip things, you're going to get hit, because there's barely a delay between those normals, which means your timing has to be insanely precise to instant block. Even if you do, by the way, he can still special cancel them, so you're going to get frame trapped if you try anything most of the time. So yeah, characters with a lot of harassment on your block and Gatlings in your face, I don't recommend going for it. I recommend only going for it in scenarios that you recognize there's a move coming and you have time to react to it, basically. So that's why it's good on Rekkas. You can see the Rekka series coming up when they start the Rekka. That's why it's good on auto-timed strings or commonly timed strings like Jacko's 2K, 2D, 2-3, 6K. That's like something that you can pretty much react to as soon as you get hit by the 2K. So keep all of that in mind. That being said, here's like a big compilation that I made of moves that you can IB and scenarios where IBing and IBFDing is good. So I hope you enjoy. I hope it gives you some insight as to why it's valuable, why you should be going for it. So that's all from me, Golds.